I and my fiance have been together for almost 2 years, and he has 2 sons from his previous marriage. My ex-husband confronted me at work yesterday about my role as a future stepmom after he had an affair and fathered a child during our marriage. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. I am at a complete loss regarding my ex-husband and his recent behavior. Sorry in advance for the novel that follows, but I need to provide enough context for this to make sense. When I was 28, I received devastating news that I couldn't have biological children due to a complicated medical condition. It was absolutely crushing. I spent months in grief counseling trying to process this reality. Eventually, I reached a place of acceptance, though the pain never fully goes away. My ex and I had been married for about 3 years at that point. He seemed supportive initially, at least on the surface. We talked about possibly adopting someday or becoming foster parents, but he always seemed to push those conversations off to someday in the future. Looking back, I should have seen the signs that he wasn't really on board with alternatives to biological children. 5 years into our marriage, I discovered he was having an affair with a coworker. This wasn't just a one-time thing. They'd been seeing each other for nearly 8 months behind my back. I later found out she was pregnant with his child. This was because my ex knew about my infertility journey and how much it affected me. Instead of exploring adoption or other options with me, he chose to father a child with someone else while still married to me. When confronted, he actually tried to spin it like I should be happy for him. He said things like, "Now we can have the family we always wanted," and suggested I could be a part of this child's life too. I was completely floored by his delusional thinking. Our marriage obviously couldn't survive this level of betrayal, and we finalized our divorce 2 years ago. The divorce process was messy and painful. Since then, I've rebuilt my life piece by piece. I work as an emergency room nurse with rotating shifts. The unpredictable schedule actually helped during the worst of the divorce. Keeping busy meant less time to dwell on everything that had happened. About 2 years ago, I met my current fiancé through a mutual friend. His previous marriage ended when his ex-wife took a job overseas and decided she didn't want to be tied down with kids anymore. He has primary custody of their 2 boys, with his ex only seeing them during summer breaks and some holidays. Building a relationship with my future stepsons has been challenging, but incredibly rewarding. My fiancé has been supportive and understanding about my infertility and past trauma, and we've built what I thought was a solid foundation for our blended family. We got engaged 6 months ago, and the boys seem genuinely excited about it. My ex has largely stayed out of my life since the divorce, except for occasional texts about lingering financial matters. He has his new family now. They had a second child last year, so I figured he'd moved on. Apparently not. Yesterday, I was finishing my lunch in the hospital cafeteria when my ex-husband suddenly appeared at my table. I was surprised to see him since our hospital is across town from where he works in healthcare administration. He asked if we could talk, and I reluctantly agreed, thinking it would be brief and about some paperwork or something. Instead, he immediately launched into accusations, calling me a hypocrite for refusing to accept his child but willingly taking on the role of stepmother to another man's kids. I was completely blindsided. He continued, saying that all he ever wanted was to build a family, and if I could accept my fiancé's children, I could have accepted his situation too. When I tried to explain the fundamental difference between betrayal and an honest relationship, he scoffed and said, "I just found a convenient excuse to avoid dealing with my own jealousy issues." I was struggling to keep my composure since we were in my workplace where I'm known for being professional. "You're just proving my point," he said. "You always cared more about your pride than having a family." This man, who betrayed our marriage, was now trying to rewrite history and make it seem like I was the unreasonable one. The confrontation escalated when he suggested that my fiancé would eventually resent me for my inability to have more children, just as he claimed to have felt. I tried to maintain my calm because making a scene at work would be even worse. The final straw came when he implied that my future stepsons would never truly see me as their mother. I finally told him our conversation was over and that he needed to leave. He walked away with this smug look. After he left, I spent the remainder of my shift trying to focus on my patients while battling all these intrusive thoughts about whether there was any truth to what he said. One of my nurse friends asked if I was okay, and I just nodded and changed the subject because I was afraid I'd start crying if I talked about it. That evening, I found myself hesitant to fully engage with my fiance's sons during our regular family dinner. I was second-guessing every interaction, worried about overstepping or somehow proving my ex right. My fiance noticed something was off, but didn't press me with the kids around. The older boy asked why I was so quiet, and I just made up something about having a tiring day at work. After the boys went to bed, I broke down and told my fiance everything. He was furious that my ex would confront me at my workplace and try to undermine our relationship. He reassured me that the boys adore me and that what my ex did was emotional manipulation, plain and simple. It helped to hear that, but I'm still feeling shaken by the whole encounter. Edit. Quick update. I just got a text from my former mother-in-law asking why I've been spreading lies about her son. Apparently, he's told his family some twisted version of our conversation. I haven't even responded because I don't know what to say. This woman never liked me, even before the divorce, and always made comments about how I failed her son by not giving him children. I'm worried this isn't going to be a one-time incident. My ex seems to have decided that my new relationship somehow threatens him, even though he's the one who blew up our marriage. Part of me wants to just block him and his entire family, but I'm concerned about what kind of stories they might spread about me, especially since we work in the same healthcare community. I plan to discuss this more with my fiance tonight, but I'm anxious about reopening old wounds and creating new doubts about my role in our blended family. I'm also considering talking to my supervisor at work, just in case my ex tries to show up again. I'm genuinely confused about the best approach here. Should I confront my ex directly about his harassment, or just try to move forward and ignore him? Thanks for reading this far, and any advice would be appreciated. Now for the first update. Wow, I did not expect my post to blow up like it did. Rip my inbox. Thank you all for the supportive comments and advice about dealing with my manipulative ex. I've been trying to read everything, but there's just so much. After putting the boys to bed that night, I finally broke down and told my fiancé everything about the cafeteria confrontation. He immediately pulled me into this huge hug and told me my ex was full of crap. He pointed out that there's a massive difference between accepting someone's kids in an honest relationship versus being expected to forgive a betrayal and pretend everything's fine. That night, I cried myself to sleep, but having him there made a world of difference. The next morning, I called my therapist and scheduled an emergency appointment. She helped me see how my ex was deliberately targeting my deepest insecurities about not being a real mom. Classic manipulation tactic, apparently. She reminded me that family is built on love and commitment, not just biology, something many of you pointed out in the comments too. For the past week, I've been working on not letting my ex's words affect my relationship with my future stepsons. The older one had his science fair on Tuesday, and despite our unit being short-staffed, I switched shifts with a coworker so I could be there. My supervisor was surprisingly understanding when I explained I needed to be there for my stepson, though I left out the drama with my ex. Seeing his face light up when he spotted me in the crowd of parents made all the schedule juggling worth it. Yesterday was the younger boy's birthday party at the local park. I'd been helping plan this for weeks. Ordered the cake with dinosaurs, found decorations, and made sure the venue understood his peanut allergy situation. The party was set for 2 p.m., and I arrived early with my fiancé to set everything up. I was hanging dinosaur streamers from the picnic shelter when I spotted her, my ex-mother-in-law. She stormed right up to me, completely ignoring my fiancé and the other parents helping set up. "So this is where you're playing mother now," she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "When you rejected my grandchild and broke my son's heart." I just froze. There were already a few kids around, including some of my stepson's friends who had arrived early. My fiancé immediately stepped between us and told her very firmly that this wasn't the time or place. She completely ignored him. "Everyone should know that she denied my son a family," she continued, pointing at me like I was on trial. "And now she's pretending infertility was the issue. She just didn't want his children." By this point, several parents were staring, and my future stepson had noticed the commotion and was walking over. Before I could react, she spotted him and actually said to him, "She doesn't really love you, sweetie. She's just using you to hurt her real family." Seeing his little face crumple was the final straw. I moved around my fiancée and got right in her face. "You are leaving right now," I told her, "or I am calling park security. This is a child's birthday party. Whatever issues you have with me, you do not drag children into it." Two other moms immediately stepped up beside me. One of them told my ex-MIL that she needed to leave immediately. I took my stepson's hand and led him back to his friends, telling him the lady was confused and everything was okay. She finally left after realizing everyone at the party was staring at her. I spent the rest of the party with a fake smile, making sure the kids had fun, while internally I was having a complete breakdown. Later that evening, after the party chaos had died down, my younger stepson came into the kitchen while I was cleaning up. He came up to me and asked, "Is what that mean lady said true? That you don't really love us?" I nearly broke down right there. I sat down at his level, looked him in the eyes, and told him that I loved him and his brother very much, and that sometimes adults say mean things when they're upset about other stuff. He seemed satisfied with that and gave me a hug before running off to play with his new toys. Later that night, my fiancé told me something. Apparently, his ex-wife had called earlier in the week asking strange questions about me. When he pressed her, she admitted that some man had contacted her with concerns about her children being around me. My fiancé shut that down immediately, but the fact that my ex is actively reaching out to my fiancé's ex-wife is terrifying. Edit. Forgot to mention that I've started documenting everything. I'm keeping a log of every interaction, saving texts, and my fiancé is doing the same with communications from his ex. My therapist suggested this might be important if things escalate further. It's becoming clear that my ex and his mother aren't going to just leave us alone. I'm worried that my past is now threatening my new family's happiness. Several of you suggested in the comments that I should look into a restraining order, which I originally thought was extreme, but I'm starting to see your point. My fiancé wants to talk to a lawyer about our options. I have to admit, part of me is scared that all this drama will eventually make my fiancé question whether I'm worth it. What if he decides that having me in his life brings too much chaos for his kids? To those who suggested my ex might be right about me being too damaged, thanks for that confidence boost. Most of you were right that this wasn't a one-time incident. My ex seems determined to punish me for not accepting his affair and child. He's escalating things by involving my future stepsons, which crosses every line. As someone accurately pointed out in the comments, he's not upset about family values. He's upset that he couldn't control me or my narrative. I've been reading through your comments about setting firm boundaries, and I think that's my next step. I need to be clear with both my ex and his mother that any contact needs to go through appropriate channels, like lawyers, and that showing up at my workplace or family events is completely unacceptable. I'll keep you all posted on what happens next with this situation, especially if we decide to pursue legal options. Thanks for being here through this and for all the support and validation. It means more than you know. Now for the second update. Update 2. I wasn't planning on writing another update about my ex's harassment so soon, but something happened at work that I need to share with you all immediately. First, thank you to everyone who offered advice on my last post. It's been 3 weeks since the birthday party fiasco with my ex-MIL, and things have gone from bad to worse. My ex and his mother have apparently decided that harassment is their new hobby. I've been getting texts and calls from unknown numbers at all hours. I've been blocking each new number, but they just keep finding ways to contact me. My anxiety has been through the roof, which isn't ideal when you're trying to focus on patients in the ER. My fiancé has been incredibly supportive through all of this, but I can tell he's worried about how this is affecting his sons. The younger one has started asking questions about that angry lady from his birthday party, and the older one has been extra clingy lately. Kids pick up on tension no matter how hard you try to hide it. Yesterday, I had to attend this mandatory professional development conference for emergency care providers. All the hospitals in our region send staff, and it's one of those things you can't skip without risking your certification. I was already on edge about going because I knew my ex might be there. He works in hospital administration at the facility across town, and these events usually have admin representation. Sure enough, when I walked into the conference center, the first person I spotted was my ex, chatting with a group that included my department head. I tried to avoid him, positioning myself on the opposite side of the room during the morning sessions. Several times I caught him whispering to people while looking in my direction. During the lunch break, my department head approached me while I was getting coffee. She said my ex had mentioned some concerns about my emotional stability possibly affecting patient care. He's now trying to sabotage my professional reputation. I spotted my ex standing alone near the water cooler and decided enough was enough. I confronted him in a relatively private corner and asked what he was doing talking to my boss about me. He said he was just concerned about my well-being given my complicated personal situation. Then, he suggested that irregular hours of ER work combined with my new family situation was too much for someone with my history. He brought up my infertility issues, implying they made me emotionally fragile. One of my colleagues walked up. My ex changed his tone. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Just remember, I'm always here if you need support. We have history after all." I removed his hand and told him clearly that what he was doing constituted harassment, both personal and professional, and that I'd be documenting this interaction. Before walking away, he leaned in and said, "Remember who has more influence in this community." After the conference, I got messages from 2 different colleagues asking if everything was okay. My ex had been suggesting to others that I was dealing with jealousy issues that might affect my work. One colleague even mentioned he said something about me being unstable since the divorce. To clarify, since many are asking, my ex has absolutely no valid concerns about my ability to do my job. I've never mixed personal issues with patient care, and my record speaks for itself. This is purely about control and punishment because I've moved on with my life and found happiness without him. I spent last night researching harassment policies and gathering evidence. I've been screenshotting everything, the weird texts from unknown numbers, emails, and now I'm documenting these work incidents too. My fiance sat with me while I organized everything into a timeline, and seeing it all laid out made us both realize how systematic this harassment has become. This morning, I called a lawyer who specializes in restraining orders and harassment cases. I have an appointment tomorrow to discuss my options. I'm also planning to speak with HR at my hospital about workplace protection before my ex can do more damage. The hardest part about all of this is trying to maintain normalcy for my stepsons. Last night, the younger one asked me to help with his dinosaur project, and I had to push all this stress aside to focus on papier-mâché pterodactyls. When he hugged me afterward and said I was the best almost mom ever, I nearly broke down. These kids deserve better than to be caught in the crossfire of my ex's vindictiveness. Edit. Just got off the phone with my supervisor. I decided to get ahead of whatever my ex might be saying and explained the situation. She was surprisingly understanding and said she had found his concerns odd since they contradicted everything she's observed about my work. She's going to speak with HR about documenting this as potential harassment, which is a huge relief. She also mentioned they can arrange for security to be aware of the situation if needed. I keep trying to understand what my ex hopes to accomplish with all this. Does he think destroying my career and new relationship will somehow make me come back to him? Or is this just pure revenge for me refusing to accept his betrayal and moving on with my life? My fiancé is worried this will escalate further and thinks we should consider getting security cameras for our home. He's also planning to talk to his ex-wife about limiting information she shares with anyone asking about us or the kids. Part of me wants to just walk away from this whole situation and start fresh somewhere else. But I know I need to stand my ground. These people have already taken enough from me. I refuse to let them take my career and new family too. Now for the final update. Final update on my ex-husband's harassment campaign. Finally reached a resolution. First, I want to thank everyone for the incredible support through this nightmare. Your advice literally saved my career and sanity, especially those who told me to document everything. It's been about a month since my last update when I detailed the conference incident. After meeting with my attorney, we put together a solid case documenting the pattern of harassment from both my ex and his mother. The timeline we created made it clear this wasn't just coincidental encounters, but a systematic campaign of intimidation. My hospital's HR department was surprisingly supportive once I showed them all the evidence. They took my concerns seriously and set up a formal meeting with administration to address the professional aspects of the harassment. Part of me was dreading facing my ex in a professional setting, but my attorney assured me this was necessary to establish boundaries, and honestly, I was tired of hiding and being afraid. The day before the scheduled meeting, my fiancé received a disturbing call from his ex-wife. Apparently, my ex had somehow gotten her number and filled her head with all sorts of lies about our home environment being unstable and potentially harmful for the boys. He suggested she should consider seeking modified custody arrangements. My fiancé was livid, but he handled it well. He calmly walked his ex through the actual situation, even offering to connect her with our attorney. Thankfully, she and my fiancé have maintained a decent co-parenting relationship despite the distance, so she was skeptical of these random claims from a stranger. Still, my ex would target children to get to me was something I couldn't accept. That same evening, my fiancé's younger son had a nightmare and crawled into our bed around 2 a.m., sobbing about being taken away. After some gentle questioning, we discovered that my ex's mother had approached him at school pickup last week. She was not on the approved pickup list, but had told the playground monitor she was just saying hello. She had told this 7-year-old child that soon he might have to go live with his real mommy because some people are making trouble. I've never seen my fiancé so angry, and I don't blame him. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital administration meeting 30 minutes early, armed with a binder of evidence and support letters from colleagues who had witnessed my ex's behavior. My supervisor was already there, which was a huge relief. She's been amazing through this whole ordeal. The hospital's chief administrator and someone from legal were also present, along with HR. When my ex walked in, he looked completely unfazed. He looked surprised, as if this was an overreaction to what he called a simple misunderstanding between former spouses. I kept my face neutral, even though I wanted to scream. The chief administrator opened by explaining the hospital's zero-tolerance policy for workplace harassment. He mentioned they had reviewed not only my documentation, but also security footage from the conference showing my ex approaching multiple staff members while pointing in my direction. My ex briefly showed a different reaction before regaining his composure. When it was my turn to speak, I surprised myself with how calm I remained. I walked them through the escalating pattern of harassment, starting with the cafeteria confrontation, continuing through the birthday party incident with his mother, the conference, and finally his attempts to interfere with my fiancé's custody arrangement. I explained how this was affecting not just me, but innocent children who were now having nightmares. My ex kept trying to interject with context and clarifications, but the administrator firmly kept the meeting structured. When they finally showed printouts of his text messages to my colleagues and the email he'd sent my fiancé's ex-wife, she had forwarded it to us. His demeanor changed. I've seen my ex angry many times during our marriage, especially toward the end, but this was different. He suddenly stood up and pointed directly at me. "She's the one harassing me," he shouted, flaunting her new family when she denied me the chance to have children of my own. The room went silent. My supervisor and the HR representative took notes. "She owed me after wasting years of my life when she knew she couldn't give me children," he continued, his voice getting louder. "And now she's playing mother to someone else's kids? How is that fair?" That outburst confirmed everything I had been saying about his true motivations. The chief administrator immediately stood up and ended the meeting, asking my ex to leave the premises. He informed him that his hospital privileges were temporarily suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct. My ex looked stunned as security was called to escort him out. It felt satisfying to see his reaction. Later that afternoon, my attorney called with the news that the court had approved a temporary restraining order against both my ex and his mother. The order specifically prohibited them from contacting me, my fiancé, or his children, and barred them from coming within 500 feet of our home, my workplace, or the boys' school. My attorney explained that my ex's outburst in front of hospital administration had actually strengthened our case considerably. Sometimes these people really tell on themselves. That evening, we sat down with the boys and explained in age-appropriate terms that the angry lady and her son wouldn't be bothering us anymore. We reassured them that they were safe and that no one was going to separate our family. We saw their relief, which was worth the stress this process had caused. Not everything is perfectly resolved, is it ever? I've noticed some colleagues still giving me strange looks in the hallways, and according to mutual friends, my ex's mother has been telling anyone who will listen that I'm using my power to punish her son for just wanting a family. Some people will believe what they want to believe. My fiancé and I decided to move up our wedding timeline. Why wait when life is short? We're planning a small ceremony next month with just close friends and family. The boys are excited about being official brothers and getting to wear suits. The most healing moment came last weekend when my younger stepson asked me to help with his math homework because you're really good at fixing problems. Those simple words meant more to me than he could possibly understand. This child sees me for who I really am, not the version my ex tried to portray. My supervisor called yesterday to let me know that after reviewing the investigation findings, the hospital board has permanently revoked my ex's privileges at our facility. They're also sending a formal report to his employer documenting the harassment, professional consequences for professional misconduct, as it should be. While I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, it's taught me so much about standing up for myself and protecting those I love. Sometimes you have to confront the situation directly instead of waiting. Edit. So many of you have asked for advice about documentation in similar situations. What worked for me was keeping absolutely everything: screenshots of texts, emails with timestamps visible, a journal with dates, times, locations of in-person encounters, names of witnesses, and any physical evidence like letters or voicemails. I also recorded my own emotional and professional impacts, therapy visits, days missed from work, etc. The more detailed and organized, the better. My attorney said my documentation was what made the difference between he said, she said, and an actionable case. Sometimes the hardest chapters in life lead to the most important growth. I'm finally free to focus on building the family I choose without looking over my shoulder, and that feeling is priceless.